So I'm just calling this the neuromuscular perspective. It's a way of looking at the body. George needs a handout back there. Oh, you got one? Okay. You still need one? You keep needing one?
Yeah.
You keep needing one. I have one left so I can follow along. See where I am. First, the question I'd like to ask is, how does your body get like this? How does it get how it is, right? Because aren't we all kind of wondering sometimes? I know George wondered, how did my body get like this? Well, first of all, tissues grow in response to force. You know that we're here in a gym because we know that if we do things, it's going to make a change in how we are structured. It's going to change how we're built, and how we're built is going to change how we feel. So we know that our bodies will change when we do things to make them change. And where do those movements come from? Where do the ideas for those movements come from? The way I like to put this is that one second here, I've got my trusty laser pointer here. Force is dictated by habits. Remember, force is what guides tissues, but force is dictated by habits. The things that you do every day. I always have people come to say, you know, they have a problem in their body, and they're always saying, I don't know what I did. They always think they did something different. I always think, well, why don't we look at the things that you do? It's probably something you do every day, and you don't think about it. That's guiding how your tissues are developing, and that may be why there's a problem, right? So I always like to say, let's look at some habits. Let's look at what you do all the time and see if maybe there are some things there that can be a problem. Actually, it's a tripod for her arm. Okay, so force is dictated by habits, but habits begin with choices, don't they? Well, or do they? Some of them happen by default, don't they? I always like to ask people, who taught you how to walk? Honestly, think about it. Who taught you how to walk? I know when I was taught to walk, they just said, if you can get from there to there, we'll give you a cookie. And I just made it up, and pretty soon I was running, and I didn't learn how to run. And then I go to college, and I'm training to run and run distances, and the coach just said, you look like some kid that just speeded up. That's not an athlete. That's not how you're supposed to run. And you think, wow, that's true. I didn't really get good instruction. So if habits begin with choices, our choices come from what we know, right? We get the information that we have dictates the choices we make. The choices we make become the habits we have. The habits we have are why we look like we look. So we've got to go all the way back to getting information that's going to help us. That's how I look at it. If I've got information that's helping me, it's helpful. If I've got information that's not, it's not. So I'm going to start with kind of a little history lesson. There was something back probably, well, this was at least a couple thousand years ago. There was a whole idea in the world called geocentrism. It was the idea that the Earth was the center of the solar system. Are you familiar with that thinking? Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but they had to come up with all kinds of sophisticated mathematical formula to explain why the planets seemed to move like they moved, knowing that the Earth was the center of the solar system, right? Now, what happened was around in the 16th century, when they actually came up with the realization that the sun was the center of the solar system. Do you know what happened to all of those complex calculations? They just went away, right? They weren't needed anymore. So, what I like to show is that our idea of what muscles are, this was around 1600, and early anatomists would just take the skin off the body and look at what a muscle looked like, where it was, what it attached to, and then they named it. And they would name it for its shape or its size or that kind of a thing. And they named muscles like the trapezius. Why? Because they were shaped like a trapezoid. Or the muscle like the sternocleidomastoid because it went from the sternum to the clavicle, the sternum and the clavicle to the mastoid process. So they named it for its attachments. So they're naming them for their shapes and their sizes and their locations. But how much did that have to do with what muscles did? Because remember, that geocentrism idea, the idea that the Earth was the center of the solar system, that started a long time ago, but it was still prominent even in the 16th century and on into the 1600s. So it wasn't until, I just always like saying that the anatomists that were saying what our bodies were doing were the same people that were thinking that the Earth was the center of the solar system. So what are the chances that maybe their information might have been a little off? That's how I like to look at it. So along came this wonderful French physiologist. His name was Benjamin Armand Duchesne. Have you heard of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy? You've probably heard of that condition. Duchenne was a French physiologist, won a lot of awards, but what he did is he artificially stimulated every muscle in the body with these little electrical probes. And under stimulation, muscles would do what? What do you think they would do if you electrocuted them?
Fire.
They what?
Fire.
They would do something. I always, I've had university professors sitting in front of me who say, well, they contract. And I say, well, what does a caterpillar do when you poke it with a stick? Well, it curls up in a ball and defends itself, doesn't it? Well, what does a muscle do when you electrocute it from outside the body? It curls up in a ball and defends itself. But that forms, and actually just check this here, the physiology textbooks, anatomy and physiology, kinesiology textbooks today are based on this information. Mostly this information. The origin, insertion, and action of muscles is considered to be what happens when you electrocute a muscle from outside the body. So whatever happens, that's where you get this. That's why when you see people creating prosthetics and things like that, they always move like Frankenstein, because their ideas of how muscles move come from outside stimulation, external artificial stimulation. So what would happen if we actually, the reason I've wired up Elise today is to show you what would happen if we listened to muscles, what I like to call it is observing muscles in their natural habitat. Like what part of raising my arm is an artificial stimulation? What part of that is artificial? None of it. Where's the electrical energy coming from?
Your brain.
It's coming from me, coming from inside my system. So wouldn't it make more sense to listen to what the body is doing electrically, and then start mapping that out and start trying to understand that? And that's what I do that's kind of different than what a lot of trainers now are doing, and a lot of I say this is it's a kinesiological EMG demonstration, but the subtitle is why you need to trust your trainer. The point I'm going to make today is a lot of movement in the body that we think happens because of certain assumptions or things we've learned from physiology or anatomy classes or exercise classes. A lot of that information is not necessarily true or accurate. So, or if it is true and accurate, it's not complete and it's not helpful. Does that make sense? So what we're going to do today, we're just going to look and see what Elise's body is doing when she does a few simple movements that we do every day, just a few simple little things. And we're going to see if that can give us some insight. Now, I'll tell you in advance, I've never wired up Elise, and I don't know what we're going to see. We might see amazing things, and we might get really confused by this, but my hope is that, because I've been doing this for a long time, I've done a lot of hundreds and hundreds. In fact, I had a company between 2000 and 2004, invested a lot of money in helping me just create a set of tests to determine why the body's doing what it's doing. And I help people understand. I consult with people on what these tracings mean. So I hope whatever's going on with Elise today will be at least understandable. I'll be able to explain it to you. So maybe, maybe not, I don't know. So we're going to go to this program. So you can see that she's, now if you stand for a minute, and just, let's see, I'm going to face that way. And what I'm going to have her do is I just want you to raise your left arm out in front of you like that. And back down again. I'm raising it up again. And back down again. Okay, I'm going to record this. So I just want you to do that a few times. Okay, raising your left arm up ahead. And back down. And relax. Again, up in front of you. Hold. Back down. And relax. One more time, raising it up. Hold. Back down, and relax. Okay, so you can have a seat. Now, one of the first things you'll see, because I want at least to be able to see this, when we play this, you can see now yourself raising your arm, and you can see these tracings right here. This is your deltoid muscle right here. Now, these bars show the relative amounts of muscle participation going on. Now, what's the first thing you notice? Because I want this to be kind of I want this to make sense to you guys, because when I look at this stuff, I've seen it so many times. I'm not seeing it fresh. I've already got things that I'm looking for and things I'm going to show you, but I want you guys to tell me what you see when she does this. Simple, just observations. What muscle is mainly being used when she raises her arm? You can see it's her left anterior deltoid, this muscle right here, right? Plain and simple. But is there anything else going on in her body? The other muscles that I monitor here these are the lumbar paraspinals, left and right. These are the glute max muscles, left and right. These are the hamstrings, left and right. And if I actually take and...
So what I see is the right, is it hamstring?
This hamstring right here. It's doing something, isn't it?
And the left one, on the third time, there's an imbalance between those two. There's more activation of that.
So that's what we're going to do. See, because she pointed that out, what I'm going to do is take this third time right here, and we're just going to zoom into that so you can see that there's definitely something happening here. Do you know that the hamstring is actually firing before the deltoid muscle fires? And it's a key thing in the world that I live in. Treating shoulder problems, you're forever getting doctors writing orders that say, please fix their shoulder, and often they'll tell you what to do. They'll say, do this much exercise here, or these things here. And I always think, okay, so I have to sort of gently encourage or educate people about why you can't fix a shoulder if you have hip problems and leg problems and hamstrings that don't work and all those kinds of things, which is why, and again, I'm always going to be making plugs for using a trainer when you train, because where do we get the information about about how we want to exercise? Be honest. Where do you go when you decide what kind of exercises you want to do? Go there, right? You go to the mirror. I look at the mirror and I go, I think I need a rippling six-pack. And I think I maybe want some arms that look a little stronger, and I want a butt that's a little more firm. And so I got to go to the machine, and I'm going to look at those little pictures, and if it has the picture on there that says it does this, I'm going to just get on that machine and start doing some stuff. You see why that could be, at the very least, it could be maybe not as effective as you think, but at the worst, it could be dangerous. You could end up hurting yourself. And have you ever heard of anybody that's hurt themselves in the gym? It's a joke almost, right? Because so many people go to the gym. They try things because of how they want to look. And you know what they do? I was actually thinking of writing an article called The Reason They Call Them Dumbbells. It's all about why just doing repetitive concentric contractions, that's taking those people who artificially stimulated the body from the outside with electrical probes or whatever, and it's saying those guys, they knew it all. So what we need to do if we want a bigger biceps is just repeatedly traumatize that muscle. And you know what will happen if we repeatedly traumatize the muscle?
Your hip goes out.
Well, maybe, but really, the problem that I see is that if we really traumatize that muscle, it will grow. It will look bigger. And then we'll look in the mirror and we'll go, hey, this is working. And so what we have is the world of bodybuilding and everything that goes into, it's not healthy stuff. I mean, you know from bodybuilding, a lot of those people, when they're on stage, you could knock them over with a feather. They're so dehydrated and out of balance, and their kidneys are straining and all these things. So they've done all these crazy diets to make themselves look that way. But we look at those magazines, and then we look in the mirror, and then we go to the gym. So you see how that could be a problem. I'm just making up. Maybe it's a bit of a problem. But we're going to do a couple things with Elise now. This is what, because I thought since I'm hooking her up, and I am working with her as a runner, I want to learn a couple things for myself about her. I don't want to waste this time. And I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about the lower body and some interesting dynamics of the lower body. So have you lie face down here. Your face will be right in that crate right there. Make sure we can see her really well here. Perfect. You've got somebody running in the background. Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do, Elise, is just raise your left arm, your left leg straight up and back. Good. Back down and relax. Let's have you raise your right one all the way up. Up, hold, back down and relax. Now, can you do that higher on the left? All the way up? Yeah, and back down and relax. So you're going to go kind of like that, like high as you can, hold, and then back down and relax.
Okay.
We're going to alternate left and right so that we can all look at this together. So, start recording. Okay, left one all the way up, hold, and back down and relax. Now the right one, up, hold, back down, and relax at the bottom. The left, all the way up, hold, back down, relax at the bottom. The right, up, hold, back down, relax at the bottom. The left, all the way up, hold, back down, relax at the bottom. And the right, all the way up, hold, back down, relax at the bottom. Okay. So that gives us lots of information. It's amazing how much get up now again. You'll see how much information you can get with just a simple little test like this. There's nothing to this test, really. It's just, she's doing something that doesn't produce pain, doesn't even make her get tired. She doesn't get fatigued or anything. It's just a simple little test. But you can see now, remember, these are the hamstrings. These are the back muscles. What's missing here from Elise's incredible physique?
Her
With all
glutes.
due respect, her glutes are not doing very much. Shouldn't they be doing a lot in that motion? You would think that the glute would be the main muscle extending. But she's got killer hamstrings. She's got paraspinal muscles that are helping out. And they're contracting. They're actually producing more force than the glute max is. Her back muscles are doing the job. So when she came to me as a runner, she talked about some hip stuff. Now, it makes sense when we see this that to make some adjustments in her body to make her have less hip difficulty might involve changing that firing pattern or that ratio of muscle involvement. And what we really, really want for her is more glute action. What's interesting is if she just does a leg raise like this, don't you think that's an exercise for the butt? Shouldn't that be a thing that would make our glutes really tight? Well, I just want you to stand for a minute. Okay, I'm just facing everybody there because I'm going to just do a little. What we want to do for a second is just, let's see if she can do something. This is where we come into the biofeedback use of EMG, where why don't we find out what really does make the glute fire? Instead of going with what the old school guys did when they electrocuted the glute muscle and it fired, and it made the leg go like this. What if we actually have her do something, just try some different things. I actually had a researcher one time, I got a phone call while he was all wired up. In fact, Elise, why don't you just look at the monitor? And because she's a trainer, she has a butt, right? She's got all the necessary equipment. She's got the biofeedback here. Why don't we have you try to figure out what's going to make your glute muscle? While I tell you a little story about a researcher. Okay. So you're going to watch the monitor and just try to see what you can do to make it really, really work. It's going to be different. See how you get that little twist, and because once you know what it feels like, though, isn't it? Like when she really contracts it, what she's doing is she's connecting a feeling with a contraction. So if she has this as an aid, even for one session, she finds out something about exactly how she needs to move, how she needs to contract the muscle. She can make that thing she can really make it go, right, if she wants. And she can also see how they're different. I had a researcher, I was going to tell you, I got a phone call when I had just wired him up and left him in a room in exactly this predicament, where he was wired up and he was looking at the monitor. It was a 10-minute phone call. And
Don't flex your foot.
Anyway, I came back from the phone call, and he had tears running down his cheeks. He said, I found my glute max. And what was funny was, what I want you to do, at least try a little golfer's swing. Try like you're going to go pick something up off the ground. No, like you're going to reach, you're going to fall forward a little bit, like you're going to go reach something. try standing on, like putting your weight on one leg. A little bit, you got to turn when you do it. Let's have you just kind of reaching out like this. Back up again. And now, what happened with him, I'm trying to reproduce the thing. Let's have you just, without even thinking about it, I just want you to just pick this up. Just pick it up. Like you normally pick it up. Not like an athletic trainer. But just, what happened? See how she, when she got back up from picking something up, there was this spike. What happened was this researcher had dropped something. And he went to pick it up, but something caught the corner of his eye. And it was when he was getting back up out of picking something up that his glutes spiked. And so he started, that's what was happening when I came back in the room. He was trying to find a way to come back out of this motion. So it was like a countering of, it was like coming back up from picking something up that fired the glute, like you just saw there. So you see how accidents can sometimes, accidental observations happen because people are attached to biofeedback stuff. But if he had the feeling of what that was like. He knew what it felt like to contract your glute. And all the things that you were trying, you're connecting the feeling to that. So when you work out, now we can leave you alone and we can say, now you can go do your workout. You don't need biofeedback attached to you all the time. But once you start that motion and you have that old familiar feeling, you know that you're going to get the result you want. So you see how, I always say a feeling is worth 1,000 pictures. And, a picture worth 1,000 words. So as much as we can read or find information on muscles, the best thing for us sometimes is to try something like this. Work with a trainer. And this is where, I came here to work with, at least today, just do this little demo because we're not sure, but maybe there are people around that want to have this as a tool in their exercises. They really want to go for a session and they want to have some biofeedback involved in it or something. They want to know for themselves, what does it feel like when my shoulder actually engages the right way? What does it feel like when my glute actually engages? I want to feel that for myself. I don't want to just go on hearsay or on what somebody tells me I'm going to feel like or what's going to work that muscle. So I'm going to show you a little bit of just one other concept here that I'm going to show you. Something I've learned, it's sort of like show and tell now. You go sit there. I'm going to tell you about a pattern in the body that I never observed until I had enough work with EMG to start looking at things differently. And I was able to read research differently. And this is something I also hope you'll be able to do. Having seen this stuff today, you'll know the difference between articles you read in fitness magazines where they're just saying, and the researchers at UCLA said because so-and-so did this and that maybe this was happening. You can read between the lines and see, did they use some technology? Was there a reason that they were getting this information? Or were they just saying, experts say, or, let's really get serious. Did somebody really measure this and test this? There's an organization called the Postural Restoration Institute in Nebraska, and they actually did several cadaver dissections that showed that, first of all, I want you to know that the heart is on the left and the liver is on the right. It's an anatomical fact, right? But the heart is above the diaphragm, the liver is below the diaphragm, and the diaphragm itself, a huge muscle, it's involved every breath you take. This is the center engine of your body. Your diaphragm is not symmetrical. It's not balanced, it's not even. And if it was, your digestion wouldn't work. It's incredible how the pump of respiration not being symmetrical actually promotes movement of your internal organs in a specific direction that promotes digestion, and movement of internal contents. But what these guys discovered in their dissections was that the psoas, the deepest hip flexor muscles in the body, the fibers of those muscles actually connect and intermingle into the diaphragm, which means every breath you take affects hip rotation. And your diaphragm's not symmetrical. So what does it tell you about her hips? If we look on, we're going to go back and analyze her leg extensions in a second, we're going to see that she's not the same on each side. Yet what do we often do in the gym? we do 15 here, we do 15 here, and we go home. When what we maybe really need to do is 15 here and 5 over here and feel great. So where do you get that information? How do you know that? You need somebody to watch your back. That's how I like to put it. Like, a trainer is somebody who's watching your back. A therapist is somebody who's, I've got your back. I'm there, I'm looking out for you because you may need to do something that's not symmetrical, but how would you ever know?